Most gardeners overspend on fertilizers because, well, they're afraid of the one thing that actually works consistently. Nutrients that come from real cycles, not bottles. They chase balanced NPK numbers, pour on liquid feeds, and then, wonder why plants burn, soils lock up, or growth crashes mid-season. The real consequence is dependency. Once you start feeding plants instead of feeding soil chemistry, you're stuck buying inputs forever. The ash and urine mix fixes that problem when it's used correctly, and yes, I've tested it long enough to trust it. Before we go further, if you care about growing food with fewer inputs and more control over what actually goes into your soil, subscribe to the Farm Logic channel. This channel is about methods that work season after season, not products that expire when the budget does. Why store-bought fertilizers fail where this mix succeeds. Commercial fertilizers are designed for speed, not stability. They deliver nutrients fast, spike growth, and then disappear just as fast. That's fine for ornamental plants or short cycles, but food crops respond differently over time. Excess nitrogen pushes soft growth, weak cell walls, and pest pressure. Potassium deficiencies show up even when labels say it's present. Calcium gets locked out, magnesium follows. Wood ash and urine solve different parts of this problem, and together they form a balanced, soil-responsive feed when handled with restraint. Ash supplies potassium, calcium, trace minerals, and raises pH slightly. Urine supplies nitrogen in a highly available form, along with phosphorus and micronutrients. The key is that neither works alone as well as they do together, and neither should be applied the way people usually apply fertilizer. What ancient growers understood that modern advice, often ignores, is actually quite important. This combination isn't new, Variations of it were used in small farms and homesteads for centuries because it was reliable, repeatable, and crucially free. But those growers also understood something modern guides, honestly, tend to gloss over. Concentration matters more than ingredients. When people fail with this mix, it's almost always because they apply it too strong or too often. Urine straight to soil burns roots. Simple as that. Ash dumped into beds locks up nutrients. Use carefully. Both feed soil chemistry instead of overwhelming it. What kind of ash actually works and, what doesn't? Only hardwood ash belongs in the garden. Ash from untreated firewood, crop residues, or natural charcoal is what I use. Ash from treated lumber, plywood, painted wood, or charcoal briquettes goes nowhere near soil. Hardwood ash is rich in potassium and calcium carbonate, which is why it behaves more like a liming agent than a fertilizer. In my raised beds, I never apply ash dry directly to growing plants. Instead, I dissolve a small amount into water or blend it into compost first. Straight ash on soil creates hot spots that roots avoid. How urine becomes plant food instead of a problem. Fresh urine is high in urea, which quickly converts to ammonium and then nitrate in soil. That conversion depends on microbes and moisture. If you pour it undiluted, you bypass the soil's buffering capacity and damage roots. I dilute fresh urine at roughly 1 part urine to 10 parts water for soil application. In hot weather or lighter soils, I go closer to 1 to 15. For leafy crops that need nitrogen, this delivers steady growth without the surge you get from synthetic feeds. I don't store urine for long periods. Fresh or same day, diluted works best. Stored urine increases ammonia levels and smell without adding benefit. So here's how I combine ash and urine without causing an imbalance. I don't mix ash and urine together in a container. That's a mistake, honestly. The alkalinity of ash drives off nitrogen as ammonia gas. Instead, I apply them separately but in coordination. In practice, I'll water a bed with diluted urine first, targeting the root zone of actively growing plants. Then, a week or two later, I apply a very light ash solution, usually a tablespoon of fine ash, stirred into 10 liters of water and poured evenly over the soil surface. This spacing prevents nitrogen loss and keeps pH shifts gradual. In a typical raised bed, I might apply urine every 3 to 4 weeks during heavy growth and ash once or twice per season, depending on soil acidity and crop demand. So, what does this actually look like in real crops? Well, leafy greens respond almost immediately to the urine feed, showing deeper colour and thicker leaves, without that floppy growth I often see from bottled nitrogen. Root crops, on the other hand, benefit more from the ash component, especially potatoes, beets and carrots, which tend to show improved structure and better storage quality. Now, fruit crops like tomatoes and peppers really do their best when urine is applied early on, during vegetative growth, and ash is added later as flowering begins. That timing, honestly, supports leaf development first, and then helps with fruit set and firmness. So how does this work in small gardens without, wrecking the soil? In backyard plots, restraint is absolutely everything. I've seen people ruin their beds by thinking that natural means you can just go unlimited. This system works well because it actually respects the limits of the soil. I always apply to moist soil. Dry soil, you see, concentrates salts. I never apply during extreme heat, and I make sure to watch my plants quite closely. If I see dark green, stiff growth, that's my cue to stop. But if the growth looks pale, that means I need to adjust. Over time, soil structure actually improves because, calcium from ash flocculates clay particles and supports microbial life. That's something no liquid fertilizer fixes, Using this approach in hydroponic or soilless systems, it's a bit different. Straight urine has no place in standard hydroponics, really. But the principles still apply in hybrid systems. In media beds or soil-based hydro setups, I've used heavily diluted urine as a microbial feed rather than a nutrient source, usually 1 to 20 or weaker. Ash never goes directly into hydro systems, but ash-conditioned compost used in teas or soil blocks actually feeds plants upstream in integrated systems. The takeaway is that biology matters more than precision numbers, honestly. So here's some common advice that honestly gets this completely wrong. The idea that urine is unsafe or unsanitary for food crops is mostly cultural fear, not science. When it's applied to soil and not directly to the edible parts, pathogens don't survive long at all. Time, microbes, and even ultraviolet light take care of that. Now, the opposite myth that ash is a complete fertilizer is just as dangerous. Ash has no nitrogen whatsoever. Used alone, it actually creates deficiencies. Balance, really, is what makes this work. Now, let's talk about the trade-offs you should know up front. This method, it definitely demands attention. You can't just dump and forget. You really need to observe the soil, the plants, and your timing. It also doesn't fit perfectly into those rigid feeding schedules some folks like to use. What you gain is independence, lower input costs, stronger plants and soil that, actually improves instead of degrades. Why this still beats store-bought feed in the long term? After several seasons using this system, my beds need less intervention overall. Yields are steady, flavor really improves, pest pressure drops, and, most importantly, I'm not constantly correcting deficiencies because the soil chemistry just stays within a healthy range. That's the real win, honestly. If you care about growing better food with practical knowledge instead of, just chasing products, subscribe to the Farm Logic channel and share this video with someone who's ready to rethink how fertility really works. The best fertilizer systems don't come from stores. They come from understanding cycles and using them wisely.